Hi, I'm Allison for Leading Edge Dog Show Academy, and today we're going to talk about raking or carding, as some people call it, a setter spaniel type coat. You could use these same techniques like on a Salukis. There's lots of different breeds that kind of have this shorter, neater, tidier top coat, and then some kind of furnishings that you can use these techniques on. So when we're raking or carding the coat, the idea is that we're pulling out the undercoat and we're not cutting or damaging the harsher top coat. So that's what raking and carding. Raking and carding are basically interchangeable. I typically call it raking. So don't think that you're confused if I call it something else. So first of all, you have to have a well-prepped coat. It is sometimes very desirable to actually do the raking on a dirty coat because then you get that undercoat out, then you bathe the dog, then you condition it, you dry it in a systematic fashion so it's laying in the right area the right way, and then you can do some more fine carding and then move on to your stripping. Now, whether the dog is dirty, i.e. hasn't had a fresh bath, or has had a fresh bath, a well-prepped coat means that the first part of your raking, carding is actually carding it with a slicker brush. So this is originally the only thing that was done to these types of coats was actually going through it with a slicker type brush and carding the undercoat out. So whether you're doing it on a dirty coat or on a clean coat, you still want to have that coat well prepped, right? Because it's just going to make all the other steps easier. So going in the direction that the coat lies. So for all the raking and carding you do, you're always going in the direction that the coat's lying. You're going to start with your slicker brush, and I like to just go all the way through the coat that I'm going to be carding because you're just going to get out that real excess coat that just wants to come out, that's going to clog up your brush. I just keep going in the direction that the coat's growing. Now she's clean. She was really well stripped about 8 weeks ago. So, you know, there's not a ton of growth here, but you can still see the coat that I did get out in the slicker brush. So this would be your first step. And you could actually, with some dogs that are shedding out, that haven't had raking or carding done in a long time, you could get a lot more out with the slicker, but it just makes your next tools go a little bit easier. Now, if you've seen any of my other tutorials, you know that I always like to start with my biggest tool and go down to my smallest tool. And in this case, we're talking with the tines, like the more space between the tines of the tool, down to when we finally finish up with either a knife or a stone, that those tines would be quite close together. So once I've used my slicker brush, I might go on and use my comb just to kind of check my work, and I'm going to go through it with same way in the direction the coat's growing. I'm not really worried about the comb at this point because she has a very well prepped coat, and then the fine tines of the comb, and you can still see that I'm getting out like these fine hairs, right? So this is what raking and carding is. Then you might be tempted to use like a Coat King type rake. This is the Blackworks Rake. It has a coarser side where the teeth are further apart and a finer side, but this would still be like a coarse type rake. And again, in the direction that the coat grows, I don't expect this to do a lot on her, but you can see it kind of pulled at this neck hair where it's a little bit woollier in through here. And I would just go all over the entire dog. It's also pulling over on this side. And you can see again, the loose hair that's coming out of that. So at this point, I didn't really expect to get a lot, if any, coat using these tools out of her because she does have a good top coat. And by good, I just mean not bushy, not a lot of undercoat in it. But here's where I expect to kind of get some coat happening coming out of her. So this is a coarse stripping knife, and it's dull. So one thing about all of our stripping tools is that they come out of the package sharp. That's just how the life is. Just like you buy a cast iron frying pan and you need to season that pan, you need to season your knife. So you can check out one of our other tutorials about seasoning your knife, etc. But just know that straight out of the package, most of your stripping tools, i.e. a Coat King type rake, this Blackworks rake, or any kind of stripping knife needs to be seasoned. So when we're using it, we're holding on to the handle. I kind of have my thumb pressed up against it and I hold the knife at about this like 45-degree angle to her skin. And again, I'm always going in the direction that the coat is growing. That's why I'm standing behind her. And I'm always gonna kind of, with my other hand, hold the skin taut because you don't wanna like catch the skin. So I'm just basically raking through the coat with my knife and pulling out that undercoat, right? Always watch your dog's top lines. All dogs tend to have this natural kind of shawl line that ends behind their withers, and kind of this diamond shaped area, if you go from between the withers and make a diamond shape in enough room to make two diamonds. Typically this first diamond shape, you don't want to take a lot of undercoat out here. A lot of dogs have this natural dip here. So this is an area I don't like to rake a lot of undercoat out. I like to be able to build that up to help with the top line. Again, that's something we go over more thoroughly in some of our premium content. But just to show you how we keep raking, I just see how I'm holding the coat taut, and I just have it at this 45-degree angle, and I just keep kind of going through that coat. And you might notice when you're stripping dogs that have two different colors in their coat, or maybe you have a party color dog at home and one that's a solid color, that sometimes you're getting more coat out of some of the areas like that are different colors. So for instance, when I'm raking out this roan part of her, I'm not getting as much coat as I'm getting out of the darker black spots, right? And that's just something that happens, you know, with the different coat color. Obviously it can be a little bit of a different texture. So I just keep raking along, right? And you just keep pulling out that undercoat. And so people kind of always ask, like, how do you know, and see how you have to pull the skin nice and tight here. How do you know like when to stop? Well, you're gonna stop when you stop getting coat out. And so remember that you're doing this over your entire dog, right? So, you know, you might have to change the position of your body. We're going down the shoulder, we're going down the sides of the neck, and see how I had to change, like, I'm not going completely straight back, I'm going down. And then you kind of want to blend it into the skirt or furnishings, right? And this is where it gets tricky, that you want to make sure that you're going all over the entire dog. So once you've raked out a lot of the coat, I like to use, you know, maybe like a mix of witch hazel and water or something, and give them a little spritz and then go over them. Typically for this, I like to use a good bristle brush. And again, always training the coat, always making it go in the direction that the coat grows, or you want it to grow, so you can kind of see where you're at. Does it look even? Does it look like, is there any part that kind of looks bushier than other parts? Here, where we have a transition from where she would be clippered, stripped, and then the thinning sheared area in between, it's gonna look a little bit bushy. We have these wings, you know, but her coat is starting to lay down and behave itself compared to when we first started. So remember that that's what's with one of our bigger tools. So to really fine tune the carding process, we could move on to something as simple as a pumice stone, right? So I have a pumice stone here. One of the things is I always like to scrape it and get a nice edge to it. And again, you're using it in that raking motion. And because this is finer, it's going to get some of those other hairs out. You can see the hair that I'm getting out. And it just runs it over and makes a better job of your work. Now, I like to finish off with the stone. Obviously, if you start at the beginning with a really big bushy hair, you don't want to start with the stone. That's why you're starting with your slicker brush, your comb, then your rake, then your knife, then maybe you're moving on to a stone to get those final hairs out. As well, like we said, Rosemary here was very well groomed about 8 weeks ago. Therefore, her hair is pretty tame, right? This is kind of like, it's not exactly maintenance because she is grown out a little bit, but it's also not starting with a dog that is either a puppy that has a really woolly coat or something that hasn't been stripped in many, many months. And in that case, it might take you, you know, 2 or 3 carding sessions over the course of a week. Like if I get something that's really bushy and hairy that hasn't been properly stripped out in a long time, I might do a carding session every 2 days for a week till I get it down to the point where I think I can actually start working the coat and creating something with that coat. Now, another tool that you might use is something like a pumice stone on a stick, like we have stone on a stick, and you might use that for like these, you know, intricate areas like between the eyes. I would still, when I'm, you know, kind of stripping this area, I would probably start with my stone and just use the corner of it. And, you know, you can do the top of the head, all of these areas. So remember when we are carding out, raking out that undercoat, to start with your biggest tool, a slicker brush first, right? And that was the original carder, then a rake, then we're gonna work down to a knife. By the time I've gone through the coat a couple times, you can still see I'm still getting some coat out with this knife. I've just moved to another area, right? Then by the time we think we have most of the coat out with the knife, we're gonna give them a spritz. We're going to just go through it with that nice bristle brush, always going in the direction that the coat has grown. And then we're just gonna finish up with something like a stone on the stick, or something like that. And then once your dog, the carding, the raking is done properly, then you're ready to start on the stripping. And, you know, obviously a setter spaniel, we're not stripping it down to skin like you would a terrier, but you're still going to use the same motion where you could use your fingers, your knife, and your finger to actually, so stripping is when you're using the knife and your finger to pull that coat out, right? And one of the ways to know if your knife is properly seasoned is when you pull that coat out, are the strands of hair long? If they are, that typically means your knife is not sharp and you're using the right technique. If when you're pulling, there's no hair extending past the teeth of your knife, that's a sign that either your tool is too sharp or you're using the wrong technique, or kind of maybe a combination of both. So when it comes to raking or carding, which is a very, very important step, it's an important technique to learn. Remember, always start from your biggest tool, work down to your smallest tool, going in the direction that the coat grows. That's it for today. I hope that helped. Thanks for watching today's video. Please leave us a comment below. Let us know what you thought. And as well, if you have any ideas for future content that you'd like to see, you can put them down there as well. You can head over to leadingedgedogshow.com where you can find our free, premium, and subscription content, and we'd love to have you join us there. As well, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on those notifications. That way you never miss another free video tutorial. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.